Just over a week ago, I was joined by our Chief Medical Officer for Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, to announce the first stage of Alberta's plan to relaunch our economy. For many Albertans, this was a light at the end of the tunnel that we've been going through since mid-March when Alberta first began to bring in public health measures to protect lives from the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. But because of concerns by our public health officials over growing community spread in Calgary and Brooks in particular, which had 85% of active COVID cases, the difficult decision was made to delay some aspects of reopening to give our public health experts more time to monitor trends in those two communities. And I want to say thank you to folks in Calgary and Brooks for having continued to show great responsibility and a care for others through their conduct over the past couple of weeks, we've been able to see continued positive progress in the fight against COVID-19 in Calgary and Brooks, as well as the rest of the province. Calgary now has seen almost 4,000 COVID-affected patients recovered, and there are only 45 COVID-19 patients in hospital, of which 5 remain in intensive care. Too many Albertans are familiar with the heartbreaking impact that COVID-19 has had on our continuing care facilities, which have seen nearly 75% of the lives lost to the pandemic in Alberta. But we are turning a corner in those facilities as well, with an overwhelming majority of cases in continuing care now having recovered. We were all concerned as well about the serious outbreaks at the large meatpacking plants, including JBS in Brooks. I'm pleased to report that over 99% of the employees who had been infected at those plants have since recovered, and the vast majority have voluntarily returned back to work. Thanks to the vigilance of Albertans, we're winning the fight against COVID-19. We have the lowest level of hospitalizations, the lowest level of ICU admissions, and the lowest level of deaths per capita amongst the large Canadian provinces, and we are far, far below the level experienced throughout most of the developed world, and we continue to lead the world on testing. And so I am therefore pleased to announce that on the advice of Alberta's Chief Medical Officer for Health, we are proceeding with the next phases of reopening businesses and services in the communities of Calgary and Brooks. This means that on Monday, May 25th, hairstyling and barbershops will be permitted to reopen in Calgary and Brooks. Cafes, restaurants, and pubs and bars can also reopen for table service at 50% capacity this upcoming Monday. And on June 1st, day camps, including summer school, will be permitted with limits on occupancy in those communities. Post-secondary institutions, including summer school, will be permitted with limits on occupancy. Will be permitted, within the limits for in-person classes that have been outlined by public health. And places of worship and funeral services will also be expanded if they follow the specific guidelines that have been outlined and have been already the case in the rest of the province. While this is positive news for many, it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods yet. COVID-19 still poses a very real risk, and we must all continue to act responsibly and look out for one another. Alberta so far has lost 132 lives to this pandemic, and that number is still likely to rise over the weeks to come. Each one of those lives lost is a heartbreaking experience for their loved ones and friends. And this is why we must continue to practice physical distancing and enhanced hygiene, to wear masks in areas where we cannot be physically distanced from others, and to just take care especially for the most vulnerable. It's also why the government of Alberta is taking new steps to screen international travelers arriving at our airports and our Coots border crossing. It's also why there are still some restrictions on the size of gatherings, although we did expand that to 50 for outdoor gatherings last Friday. And it's why it will still take some time for things to return to normal. But we're on the right track, and that is because of the classic culture of personal responsibility and care for others, which has always characterized Alberta. So thank you for what you're doing. I'm also pleased to underscore that the Canadian Federation of Independent Business reports today that more businesses are open and operating in Alberta than in any other Canadian province, underscoring that we did this the smart way, in a targeted way, with fewer restrictions impairing our economy, but better results than all of the large population Canadian provinces.